Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spirit Man Studios. And today I was going to put out a video on a very special film I wanted to talk about for some time, but the script has been going back and forth between the people I'm having conversations with. We're trying to edit it down to the point where we can actually present it in a better fashion. I'm not the only one looking at my script for it. I have a couple friends that are looking at it. But on the whole, you will be able to see an episode on that film and how it affected me later on as part of a new initiative on the channel about talking about films that have affected me personally and even inspired me in many different ways. And there's also the question of where is your best and where is your worst lists. As it stands now, I have finished watching all the Oscar-nominated Best Picture nominations, so you won't have to worry about any of those not making any of the lists. And the first part of both of those should be out by around February 8th, which is also when I'm supposed to be doing my the Lego Movie 2 review for that. But today, we're not going to talk about that. Today, we're going to be talking about Blu-ray pickups that I have acquired over the past couple months now. I haven't done one of these in a long while, mostly because I've been focusing on other projects or other things. So let's get down into it. This first one comes from Christmas, and it is Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. It's not my favorite film of the year. In fact, it is on my worst list this year. However, I am a completionist, so whenever it comes to movie franchises, I can't just exclude the ones that I don't like. Sometimes I like watching some of the bad ones to remind me how good the good ones are. So that's why Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom is in the list here. Next up is a movie trilogy that I might do a video on later on, way after Alita Battle Angel comes out, and talk about director Robert Rodriguez. And those films would be the Spy Kids trilogy. The Spy Kids trilogy had affected me as a kid. I remember the advertisements for these movies and how it was like, oh yeah, a spy learns what to listen to and all that. Like for their soundtrack, it's like real spies know what to listen to. It's like, okay, that's kind of corny. I'll definitely talk about these films later in the year, but I do. But again, these films are the most corny things I've ever seen, and for Robert Rodriguez, the fact that he was able to do a kids film of all things is still very, very rewarding. Next up is Poltergeist. I don't know if I talked about this film before, so I'm just putting it in here. This was a pickup when I went up to Tri-Cities a couple weeks back. It was like all the way in January, like the beginning of January. And Poltergeist is one of those films I really do enjoy. It's one of the best haunted house movies I've seen. This will probably get one of those episodes of like the media that affected me sort of things. The next four movies I have here is going to be the basis for another one of my episodes on the media that affected me in May. You may be able to guess it. It was a popular kids show in the 90s. It's getting a movie this year, a live action movie, and that is Pokemon. I am a huge fan of Pokemon, a very huge fan. I grew up with it. I played the video games. I did the card games. I still play the card games every once in a while with a group of friends. And I still think that the Pokemon series is really good for what it is. At least it's a kids TV series, and it teaches about friendship and compassion and teamwork and all that stuff. And it's very much of the times and the values of the movies and the values of the TV show definitely carry over through the more recent generations, as far as I've seen anyway. But I liked the first three movies, and then I went to the Fathom events for I Choose You Pikachu, some people, some people definitely wasn't into that one, but I was. I could explain why later, but we just don't have the time right now to talk about those. Next up is a film called Ghosts of the Abyss. This was a documentary made in the early 2000s. It was after James Cameron made Titanic, and he wanted to make an expedition back to the wreckage to really look at the wreckage. And in this documentary, he invites Bill Paxton along with him, and it's a really fun look at maritime submarine exploration of shipwreckages, and it's really good. It's a pretty fun documentary. It is quite short, however. It's a very short documentary, so I do say, like, if you pick up a version of this, like on the Blu-ray 3D, definitely go with the extended edition because it does add, what was it, 30 minutes to the runtime? Yeah, it runs it runs about 30 more minutes. So definitely go with the extended cut. The extended cut is way better than everyone else gives credit for. Next up, and I don't know why this is broken, is Enchanted. Enchanted is it's okay, I guess. It's an okay movie. I haven't watched it in a long time, so I'm not entirely sure how it fares nowadays. But who knows? I think that's pretty good. Sorry if my camera moved slightly. I had to grab a couple more movies because I forgot about these movies in the lineup of of the films I picked up. So the next one is Mission Impossible Fallout. Definitely the best action movie of 2018. It's fast paced, and while it's not very character centric, the action sequences that they set up in the movie, the execution of all of them, is really good. There's some visual effects that don't quite work as well. I remember there was like this dream sequence at the beginning where a nuke goes off and Tom Cruise's female lead just like like eradicates, but like the bones don't look so great. It looked like a cartoon or something like that. Just, I don't know. There was something wrong with the visual effects in that department. But when it came down to it, I thought Mission Impossible Fallout was really good in the action. It's definitely some of the best of the series. And Henry Cavill is a pretty fun antagonist. Very cheesy, sort of like a little bit of a mustache twirler. But definitely Mission Impossible Fallout is definitely one of the best ones. The last time I mentioned National Treasure was in the last Blu-ray pickup, Blu-ray pickup number 7, and now I have National Treasure 2. Both of these films were part of my childhood. They were part of my upbringing, and the first National Treasure was fun. This one, I'll explain why it doesn't work so well in the future, but it's still fun. It's still entertaining. You still have Nick Cage being a crazy asshole to everyone, but like, I enjoy it. It's an enjoyable Nick Cage film. All right. For those of you who actually go to my website, which is linked down in the description below, I did a editorial on this one, and it's called Once Upon a Deadpool. I talked about whether or not this is actually worth it to purchase at the current going rate for the film, which is like what, $20. And in summary, I said it's not entirely worth it, considering the fact that the super fucking cut, as it clearly says on the box, is definitely the superior cut of all 3 cuts. But honestly, the stuff that makes this one worth it is all the Fred Savage stuff. It's actually kind of funny every time they cut back to him. And there is a nice little thing at the very end of the film where they kind of like break the fourth wall and let you in on the fact that it's, something that's added on to the movie. And I wish, Deadpool, the theatrical cut of Deadpool 2 actually did more of. I wish they did more of the whole industry meta stuff, but, beggars can't be choosers. I think this is fun. It's definitely not a Christmas special like some claim to be, but I do support this cut as well as because the whole thing was made for charity reasons, and for that, I give props to Ryan Reynolds and the Deadpool team. Uh, definitely, it's definitely kind of a pickup. If you're curious about it, it's a definite pickup because if you're, again, if you're curious, your curiosity is going to kill you if you don't see it. But definitely pick it up. Next, I recently picked this up on yesterday, the 30th of January, and that is Reign of the Supermen. I had a chance to watch it. It's actually really fun. It's a really good sort of, kind of mystery. Granted, by around the 45-minute mark of the film, I was like, okay, I kind of figured out who everything was. Like who's Cyborg Superman, who's all this. There really isn't much mystery to it. But it is a really fun closing out section for the Death of Superman that was released last year. But Reign of Superman, definitely recommended. And also you get Tony Todd as a very secret character in this movie. I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say he's very imposing. I'll say that. He's very imposing, and the character actually looks like Tony Todd, which is very interesting. I would love to see him actually do the real version in like a live-action version of the character, maybe in a Justice League movie sometime. But that's all I'll say. Next up is Blind Spotting. Blind Spotting is really, really, really freaking good. I bought this for $4 at a Salvation Army. Discs all clean, which is very, very rare. I'll go to like a thrift shop sometime, and sometimes, or a lot of the times, I usually get a DVD and it's all scratched up, or a Blu-ray and it's all scuffed. But this, very, very clean. $4. And Blind Spotting, definitely one of the best films of the year. I'll definitely talk a little bit more about it in my best list, which should come out pretty soon. But Blind Spotting, make sure you watch that. It's very it's one of the most understated films of the year, and I think the way it talks about certain issues pertaining to contemporary, race relations is actually helpful. The last Blu-ray on the list that I have here is Bad Times at the El Royale. Oh boy, this film is one of my favorite films of the year. It is a definite recreation of like a Tarantino style film, but without the excessive profanities or the excessive violence. I mean, yeah, sure, it gets violent, right? But it's a film that not only deconstructs Tarantino's style of directing a film, but it is also a film that also dissects things and issues of the time, such as race and sex and all this other stuff. And plus, also, you got Chris Hemsworth as this really hilarious yet imposing sort of cult leader. And I found that very interesting and very hilarious at times. And it just kind of proves that Chris Hemsworth is a bit more versatile than his Thor days. I mean, granted, he's still great as Thor. But, when you give him a role like what you did in Bad Times at El Royale, he proves that he can be a little bit more than what we're used to. And so, for that, I really appreciate it. And last but not least is a DVD of a TV series I watch religiously. Not really religiously, to say, but this TV series is one of my favorites, mostly because, again, I grew up with it. I actually, for background on this one, I saw the TV show on VHSs that my mom had recorded. It was from this PBS live stream of all the episodes from the show, from series 1 through I think around 7. And I saw most of those episodes on these VHS tapes. I'm not entirely sure if we have those anymore, but I only had series 1 through 8 and the movie special that they released in 2000. I want to say 2007, I think. And this one is Red Dwarf Series 10. I know I still don't have all of the series, considering the fact that there's still series 11 and 12 out there, and now they're currently working on series 13. I'm still a big fan of this show, and I watched all 6 episodes from this season alone, and it's not as great as some of the other series, but it's still pretty competent in some areas. I like the fact that in this season alone, they got rid of the whole CG model bullshit that they had with Series 8, and just went back to like using models, or at least that looks like what they're using. They're using models, which is something I definitely gravitated towards in the original DVD cut. I'm not a big fan of the enhanced editions of the seasons at all. I'm more of a fan of the, just using the practical effect of like this giant red spaceship moving across the sky with some practicality. I really enjoy it. And some of the stories here are kind of funny. Some of them not so well written as others, but it's still a fun time with the Dwarfers. I really enjoy this series. I might do a video on it later about why I love the series so much. And there you have it. All the Blu-ray DVD pickups that I've had in the last month and a half, I think. And so, yeah, for recap, best and worst lists should be out. The first part of each are probably going to be out by February 8th. And then I'm going to have a special video on a movie that I wholeheartedly love that has been strung through the ringer of editors, friends who are helping me edit the script. So, yeah, that's all I have to say, and peace.